Chapter 10. The worker dreamed of slowly falling, tumbling weightless through gray light. Shadows swarmed in violent rushes of air, their eyes yellow. But unlike in his toll visions, they didn't attack. They simply watched him, as if preparing to lunge but biding their time, waiting for his most vulnerable moment. The worker couldn't escape this endless descent, and his anxiety increased. The eyes, the hexagonal scales lighting up, the swish and flick of their tails. Suddenly he wanted them to attack him. He wanted out. He wanted it to end. The gray light faded, but he fell further. Let it end. Then he struck bottom, and liquid rushed him from all sides. He woke breathing heavily, sweat streaming along his lizard skin clothes. There was hard stone beneath him. I'm back in the workers' quarters, he thought. His neck felt odd, though. There was something under it, a rolled mat. No, I'm not in the workers' quarters. His eye throbbed, dried blood on his cheek, the cloth wrapping the wound. He remembered. I was saved from the abyss. These people helped me. They wrapped my wounds. The worker tiptoed down the hallway back to the main room centered by the large blackstone table. You get any shut-eye? Asked Caden, looking up from a bowl of soup. He, Rye, and Marin sat around the obsidian table. Yes, said the worker. We'll solve that soon, said Rye, gesturing to the bandage. Mav is getting things ready as we speak. Why don't you eat something first? I am quite hungry, he thought. Sure, that'd be good. He needed to thank them. Then he needed them to return him to growing room 1. He was probably late for work by now. The terma plants needed to be tended. Marin hopped up and went into the adjoining room, and soon returned with a bowl for him. You might recognize this, she said, setting down the bowl of green goop. The worker smiled. What's so funny? The last 2 times I was offered this, I poured my bowl on the floor. Rye wrinkled his brow. You did? That's pretty brave, said Marin, brushing her yellow hair back. I think this soup makes me sleepy, said the worker. Not our version, said Mav, entering the room from a second hallway. What's the difference? Asked the worker. This one won't make you forget, said Caden. You may not have noticed, said Rye, but the same plant that keeps you alive keeps you asleep. What do you mean? Asked the worker, even though he was starting to understand. He just had to be sure. The terma plants that you tend to, or that you used to tend to, contain terma powder, or terma, Caden explained. We refer to their quantities in doses or parts. Rye nodded. The terma improves our senses, but the terma root dulls them. In proper doses, the root removes sensory memories as early as the previous day. Day? Shifts. I have started to remember things, admitted the worker. Like what? For example, I wanted to meet Caden again, but then you didn't show up until I was attacked. The group laughed, but the worker wasn't sure why. What else? Asked Rye. Memories from childhood. You see, said Rye, nodding approvingly. Your mind is ridding itself of the root already. That's why, said Caden, as a worker, every day was exactly the same for you. Not exactly the same, said the worker. I found the 6th bulb, didn't I? True, said Caden. There might be something different about you. He eyed Rye when he said it. Rye's old face was calm. We make the same soup as the workers eat, but we don't add the root. We grew up eating it, said Mav, so we've gotten used to the taste. It doesn't taste that good, said the worker. How would you know? Said Rye, curious. I once had a seed, a purple seed. It was sweet. When? It's strange. I've only just remembered, to be honest. As a young worker. One of the older workers gave it to me before sleep. He described it that way. He didn't say where he got it. Could be the nightshade seeds, said Mav. Caden nodded. Gare and I found some of them in the lower caverns. Hard to find, though. Marin cleared her throat. A light pip of a noise, and tied her light hair behind her head with an obsidian pin, then held up a spoon of the goop. Go on, eat up. He did. Rye got his attention after a few bites. Well, now that that's out of the way, there's something important to decide. Marin and Caden looked up expectantly. Caden whistled toward the hallway. Soon Bella and Gara joined the group in the main room. Everyone here has a name, said Rye. A name? He thought. We are individuals, said Rye after allowing Mav an extended explanation which the worker didn't follow. And individuals have names. I am a growing room 1 worker, said the worker. Maybe I am not an individual. Maybe I cannot have a name. Well, I run this crew, said Rye, smiling and sitting up. And it looks to me like you're an individual, and every individual here must have a name. The worker felt the urge again to thank them for what they'd done, to make them feel good about the help they thought they'd given him. But then he had to tell them he couldn't stay, that his business was back in the growing room with the Terma, as his training had taught him. But they had been so friendly. They accepted him, and were intrigued by his story of the seeds and of the 6th bulb. He felt a glimmer of something he had not felt since he slipped into a memory. He was being held, giant arms around him, holding him. Great, long fingers like sturdy vines keeping him safe on her lap. His birth mother. That brown face and the smile welcoming him. He understood what he was feeling was like the feeling the birth mother had given him, and so too the earliest youth trainers. A connection. A connection between one and another. A connection between individuals. But I cannot, he started to say. I mean, how should I know what my name is? Caden leaned back, smiling. There again, the worker felt it. A glimpse of that feeling he'd understood as a connection. Rye spoke up. Many of us harbored a desire to go back into the system for a long time. There are moments I have dreams about the system. In the first moments I wake, I don't know whether to call them dreams or nightmares. Do you understand? I think so, nodded the worker, remembering his long fall into the abyss that seemed so real, but wasn't. Rye leaned toward the worker from across the table. He didn't smile quite as much. Unfortunately, you cannot go back into the system, and that's okay. So, said the worker, you're saying you will give me a name like only you and the directors have? No, said Rye, taking the reins back from Caden. You will decide your own name. It's the name that naturally comes to your mind, said Caden. You can change it later, like Mav did, but most of us have kept our original names. Do you have it? Asked Rye. The crew needs to get back to work, but we'd like to know your name first. The worker stared down at the table through one eye. Nothing came naturally. I guess I'll have to disappoint them, he thought. Just like he had disappointed Director Dima. Maybe it was a sign he wasn't meant to be with them, but instead, back at work. But then a thought entered his mind, like the distant echo of the first toll ringing through the abyss. Abel, said the worker quietly. Then he lifted his head. My name is Abel. Very well, Abel, said Rye. Welcome to Haven. He stood as he said it, standing before Abel, extending his arm. Well, aren't you going to shake my arm? Said Rye. Abel tentatively raised his arm as if peeking under the leaves of the terma plant in search of the 6th bulb. Rye grasped Abel's forearm. Feeling the connection, Abel closed his hand on Rye's. Standing closer, Abel now saw Rye did not have scars but rather indents and folds of skin that twisted around his eyes, nose, and forehead. He was just old. Abel wasn't sure he knew how he knew this, since he'd never seen an old person before. No one in the city matched his age, except perhaps the Rahz, who lived a very long time indeed. Abel, there will be terma enough for you to tend here in Haven. Your skills will not be wasted. The Haven crew stood in an arc around Abel. Rye smiled again, then said, Abel, this is your family now.